Hi everyone, this is Britt Simon. I thought I'd just do some questions, take some questions, do a Q&A session. I'm sure there must be some questions and concern from DV 2022 folks. Probably now DV 2023 folks are starting to have questions and probably need some guidance. And there may be, we can clarify also on DV 2020 and 2021. Actually, I'll start there because it's the simplest. I'm bound to get some questions asking when the, what's happening with DV 2020 and 2021. There's the lawsuit appeal is still going forward. There will be oral argument heard in September now, and nothing will happen prior to that point. So the original deadlines to start issuing visas on those lawsuits were at the end of September. So clearly, once the appeals are heard, if they are won by our side, if we achieve permission to have those visas issued, the timeline will be shifted. So we just need to wait and see what happens in September, and hope that the lawyers do a good job of arguing the case there. I'm hopeful they will. So we'll see. Okay. So there you go, Dr. Usama. That's your question. You're still waiting for DV 2021. Absolutely. All right. So same question here. Same question from several people. So yeah, let's hello from Cape Town. That's awesome. And someone from Nepal. It always amazes me, this format where we can go live, we can talk to each other. I wish it was interactive both ways, but we'll cope with this format. So that probably covers the DV 2020 and 2021 cases. Here's a really good question from Roman. Do we need to send documents? Now, this relates to DV 2023. We know that the document procedure was removed for DV 2022. And when they removed that requirement, they were very specific in that announcement that it was for DV 2022. So in my opinion, I've been expecting them to make some sort of update to say that process will continue into DV 2023 because it's the pilot program, right? If they do a pilot program, they should really confirm that pilot program is what's moving forward. However, we've not seen that, and we're at the point now where we should probably have seen some requests for documents by now, for some cases, the earliest cases that would have been processed. So it's beginning to seem like we are still going to keep the pilot program. I've got my fingers crossed that that's the case, because it's a much better process without the document procedure, frankly. There are some pros and cons to it, but unless the government can handle the document procedure correctly, it represents too big a problem, too much complexity, too much slowdown, and too much confusion for the selectees. They don't know whether their documents are processed. It's badly organized, right? So right now, I've not heard of a single case for DV 2023 that has been asked to produce documents and send documents in. That could change in the next 2 or 3 weeks. But if we still haven't seen anything in the next 2 or 3 weeks, then frankly, I think we're moving forward with the pilot program. So I hope that answers it, Roman. It could change. I can't be 100% certain at this point. Nobody can. With the absence of any correction or information from the government, we just have to guess and speculate about that. Okay. All right. Let me just read other comments here. Other questions. Okay. What's the highest number for DV 2023 in Europe you've heard of? I haven't tracked them as well as I had hoped. I haven't seen as many numbers to sort of make a guesstimate about that. I have a suspicion that we're dealing with another over-selected year simply because of the numbers I have heard. But I don't know enough numbers to sort of put a stake in the ground saying for Europe or for any other region, what are the highest numbers. I'm hoping by now some forums which collect information will be beginning to build up that picture. So I'll defer to them for the time being and see see what that says. The other interesting thing, by the way, is that the August visa bulletin for DV, so I was hoping that the visa bulletin that was just released would actually give us the selectee numbers for DV 2023. We didn't get that. So it should be in the next visa bulletin, which will be in about 3 weeks' time, 2 to 3 weeks' time. So we'll have to see how those numbers work out. Okay. Says a pretty low case number. Yes, that's a. So is South America. South America numbers are typically a little bit smaller. The maximum case is probably going to be around about 3,000 or 4,000. But yeah, pretty low number. You said your DS260 May 10th. Can you expect an early interview? Yep. If your case is relatively simple, Cesar, then yeah, you could be processed pretty easily. And when I mean simple, if you're a single applicant, those tend to get processed faster than family applicants. If you haven't worked as a nuclear rocket scientist, that's helpful. If you haven't had extensive travel history in the Middle East, for example, that's helpful. So there are some things about your application that can make your case simple. And if your case is simple, then yes, you can expect fairly fast processing. But you, Cesar, with your early submission, if you also then were a simple case, you would be one of the people that I would have expected by now to have been asked to present documents, right? And so the fact that you haven't got an email saying please send in your documents, that's a positive sign that actually we're going to be working without document submission in DV 2023. So I hope that's the case. Are they still giving interview dates in African countries? Yes, they are. Actually, I think I need to talk about, there's been a lot of bullshit, So there is constant confusion. I understand that when people look at the numbers. But for example, if you look at Frank's, so there's a couple of sources of data that I would like to show you. Let me just show you this, because I think this is going to be a question that's going to come up. So share my screen. Screen 2. Yeah. Okay. Let's have a look at this. All right. So this table is the SEAC data presented by Frank, who's a programmer here in Silicon Valley. And as we can see, there are almost 55,000 cases have been scheduled, right? And so some people have said, okay, so they're not going to schedule any more cases then because they've already reached the limit, right? That's not true. That's not correct. So they may not schedule more cases. That's a possibility, and we don't have control and we can't predict that. But it's not because they've already hit the cap. That would not be true. And why is that the case? Well, let's have a look at this site, which is also the same data, but slightly differently presented. And you can see here that there are refused cases, 2,800 cases already refused, 2,900. And this is from a few days ago. The latest update was just on Friday, or yesterday, actually. So 2,900 cases have been refused, people rather. Those cases will have been returned to the pile. And there are 5,800 people in AP. Now, AP cases at the end of the month, where you were originally interviewed or scheduled to be interviewed, if you're in AP at the end of that month, your pre-allocated visa is returned to the central pot and can be recycled to other cases, right? So 2,900 people refused, 5,800 people in AP, some of which will have been in AP for several months already. So let's say another 2,000 or 3,000 people there have had their visa allocated, and recycled. So that's like 6,000 people. Plus in the ready pot here, there are people who failed to show up for their interview, and those cases have also been recycled. So even though the numbers show that 55,000 people, almost 55,000 people have been scheduled, at least 6 to probably 8,000 people have already had their visas recycled, right? And so we could see this number actually, if we had time, and I'm not sure we've got time, but if we had time, we could see that number go to well over 60,000, right? 63, 64,000. So we don't need to worry about the cap having been met because of these scheduled numbers. That's an incorrect mistake. And some people get this wrong. Some of the lawyers get this wrong. Nicolette Glazer just put out some bad information about this. I mean, it's all over the place. But the reality is we're not near the cap yet, right? And will we hit the cap at all? No, I don't think we're going to hit the cap. We're not going to get to 55,000 issued visas, even if they have a very busy month of scheduling in September, which I don't expect. But even if they did that, we won't get to 55,000, 54,850. It's not going to happen. I could show you why, but it's not going to happen. Basically, I mean, out of these 25,000 ready cases that are already scheduled, many of those are for August, July and August, but August mainly. And probably 15 to 20% of those cases will be refused. So that's going to be another couple of thousand. So, we're not going to hit the cap. Okay. So anyway, I thought that would be important. So did I answer your question? So the question about, is there still interview dates in African countries? Yes, they still can do that. Okay. And they have done a fantastic job. I have to say, credit where credit is due. I'm not a big fan of KCC. For 2 or 3 years, they've been in a mess. But what they have done by issuing so many 2NLs this month for August interviews, I mean, it's amazing. They've done a really good job of getting as many people out there as possible. And so I'm grateful that they've done the right thing there. And the pilot program has been a big improvement. Thank you, Frostman. Yes, I'm very well. It's my daughter's birthday today. She's 14 years old today. So we've had a nice weekend of celebrations. Frankly, I'm pretty exhausted right now. But anyway, so that's good. Interview with Garner is poor. Yeah, Accra is one of the embassies that just doesn't seem to care that they're destroying people's chances. So that sucks really. I'm just going to answer back to Jesse, because Jesse perhaps can do a live session with me next week, or I could also have a live session with Curtis. He and I have done live sessions in the past, or even Raphael, who's my biggest fan. Okay, so please, is it possible to change the address of the host during the interview? Yeah, absolutely. The address that you give in your DS-260 is not actually technically the address of your host. You may be staying there, you may be planning to live at that address, but the reason that they ask you to give that address is simply to send the green card there, right? So you can change that address at the interview. You don't need to unlock ever for that particular scenario. You don't unlock your DS-260. You can reconfirm it at the interview. You can also change the address at the port of entry, but I suggest if you are going to change the address for where you want the green card to be sent, change it at the interview. Okay, so yes, you can do that. Please, I want to know if it's advisable to submit the DS-260 now and unlock later in the year to change my interview location, since the embassy in my country is pretty slow. Case number is just over 10K for Garner. Right. Great question. Glad you've asked that, because I've seen a lot of people saying that DV 2023 folks need to select their best option for their embassy, and there are people, mainly DV 2021 and 22 people, who are saying, particularly 22 people, who are saying, change your embassy. What they seem to be, and I've even seen some of the lawyers say this, right? Select your embassy carefully. And what they all seem to just miss and just ignore is the fact that the KCC won't just accept whatever embassy you put down on your DS-260. Now, when you go into the DS-260, the first time you fill it out, you can select your embassy, right? From that point forward, you can't change it. You can't change it even 5 minutes later. But whatever you select in the DS-260, KCC will ignore and base your embassy selection based on your home address, the address you give in the DS-260. So unless you've got a very strong reason to be moved to some other embassy, they're going to ignore your choice, and they're going to ignore, particularly if your choice seems like random. If you live in Africa and you're asked to be scheduled in Brussels because you've heard Brussels is, a good place to be interviewed, they're just going to ignore that choice, right? Now, even if they don't ignore that choice, what some people this year have found is that they've ruined their chances because they selected an embassy in another country, and then the embassy either cancelled their interview or asked them for residence papers at the point of interview, and those people therefore got disqualified and they lost their chance, right? So this information to give to DV 2023 folks and say, oh, be careful about which embassy and select this embassy or choose your embassy wisely, that is an idiotic suggestion, right? Particularly when we don't know what's going to be happening in a year's time. So today, let's say, and I'm using Brussels, I'm not even sure Brussels is a good embassy to use, but as an example. But let's say Brussels is a great embassy and is flooded with people. What if in 6 months' time they have a massive outbreak of COVID, and they're not taking any cases anymore, and they're totally shut down? Meanwhile, Ghana is open, their embassy is open, and that's where you should have been interviewed anyway, right? So we just don't know what's going to happen in a year's time. So this whole advice to choose your embassy wisely and everything else is just stupid. It makes me wonder how people think, frankly, sometimes, because, selecting that ahead of time, number one, it's not possible. Number two, it's not wise. And number three, you'd have to be able to see the future, right? So for now, all you can do is stick with the embassy that you are naturally related to, right? Now, if you do get into a position later, depending on your case number, if you've got a very low case number, and if you have a reason, let's say you live in Ghana and you happen to be in South Africa right now, right? Or you've got family or friends there, and you can give South Africa as an address, then yes. And if your case number is low, so you were thinking, okay, I could be interviewed in October, November, December. Yes, you could, try and push your case to that embassy by either emailing KCC and explaining that you have family in South Africa, you plan to stay with them for a 6-month period, and you'd like therefore to be interviewed in that location. That's one way of doing it, right? Or just listing the address of South Africa. You can do that, right? But be careful. Don't do that if your case number is like Africa 50,000 or something, because you're not going to be scheduled for a year anyway. All right. So you just need to be careful that you're paying attention during the process, and you must not leave it to the point where you're in current for interview processing status. Okay. Curtis has got this wrong a number of times. It's not about when you're current. It's about when you're current for interview processing. That's a specific stage, during the process, AV status. Okay, so you do need to change your location prior to that point, because after that point you can't change. But right now for DV 2023, folks, it's too early to make these sort of decisions. Okay. Okay, when will the interviews for DV 2023 start? They should start on October 1. And it's going to be very important for us to see immediately that KCC are actually starting to gear up properly. What they should have been doing since the results were released in May is they should have had a number of people working on processing cases so that they can be ready to do a significant number of interviews in October and November. If they do no processing in May, June, July, because they're instead focusing on the previous year, then it means there'll be a very, very slow start in October. And that's a bad thing because we're losing time. And that's basically what happened to DV 2022. We lost a lot of time at the beginning, right? So, which is why they had to go into panic mode, which is why we have the pilot program and a much different way of operating in DV 2022. And luckily, KCC managed to save the day and reorganize things in a better way. But yeah, I'm hoping to see interviews starting for 23 on October 1, and I'm hoping that there would be, maybe 1,000 interviews or so in October. We'll have to wait and see, what happens. We won't have the SEAC data, by the way, similar to what I showed you, until January the 1st. So we only get to know about the interviews later by people reporting that back to me or in the forums, etc. Okay. DV 2022 scheduled at Joburg. I registered my appointment online, have the confirmation letter, but my case still says transit. Okay. You don't need to do anything to get your case to be not in transit. It's the embassy need to do that. They need to update it, but it's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. It's not. It doesn't affect your case in any way if they don't update the SEAC system from in transit to ready, right? So just don't worry about it. Relax. Just prepare for your interview. Mohammed. And you're welcome, Roman. You're welcome. Mohammed. August interview, husband cannot make it to the interview, noting he is listed to emigrate with me on the DS260. Can I go on to the interview alone? Yes, as long as you're the winner, you can. Now, people often ask this, like, if I don't take my spouse, am I going to be denied? Technically, no, you shouldn't be denied. The only thing I would say is that if you're a family, and the father isn't going, let's say, particularly the father, because, sorry, but it's, somewhat of a male-dominated society we live in today, then a CO may be suspicious of your ability to support the family without your husband going too. Now, that's not a legitimate technical reason to disqualify your case or deny your case, but it leads towards a suspicion that you might become a public charge. And so you need to be extra careful to prepare for how to answer that question. Show an I-134, have a decent plan. If you've got family or friends that are going to help you in the USA when you get here, make sure you express that plan to the CO so that the consular officer, the CO, is not nervous about your ability to survive in the USA. Okay? All right, good luck with that. Okay. Wow, a lot of questions. Let me just speed up a little bit. When's the latest you should submit your DS260? You don't need, so your wife and kids' passports. Well, technically, you don't need to wait for your wife and kids' passports for a start. So when you submit your kid's passport, it's perfectly acceptable to use one of the parents' passports on their DS260. That's okay. And your wife could submit her DS260 choosing some other form of ID. There is a selection that you can make in the DS260 that says other ID. So if I were you, particularly with your low case number, I would go ahead and submit so that you get a nice early interview and you can be done. But you do need to be sure you're going to get the passport by the time you're interviewed, right? Which could happen from your number, could happen in November or December. But unless you hurry up and submit your DS260 soon, it won't happen that soon. It would be later, right? Your late submission of the DS260 will push back your earliest opportunity to interview. Okay. DG, my daughter has a student visa interview next month. She was a derivative of DV 2021, and she's a winner. Okay. So she was a derivative of 21 and a winner in her own right in 23. That's awesome. She's had a lucky run there. When you submit the DS260, it's an application for an immigrant visa. So when they look at non-immigrant visa applications, they consider whether the person that is asking for the visa has intention to emigrate to the US. In her case, the derivative application she filled out, particularly if she was under 18 at that time, probably won't count against her. But since she's now won in DV 2023, it could do, right? They could look at both things, and that topic could come up, right? So it may make it a little bit harder. Now, having submitted a DS-260 doesn't mean you cannot be approved for a non-immigrant visa. It just means that they're a little bit more nervous about that. They're a little bit more cautious, and it's one factor they will consider towards whether you will abide by the terms of your visa. Okay, so it probably won't be a problem, but it could come up, right? Okay, 21 winner in the good luck case. My life is destroyed. Do we have any hope to get a chance? We have to wait for the appeals. I'm sorry that you feel your life is destroyed, Hamid. I must admit, I get it. I totally get it. I got my green card through the DV lottery, so I understand the importance of this. But your life isn't destroyed, okay? Sometimes life has a different path, whether you're a religious person or not. This just might be a different path that you go through. So fingers crossed for you in the good luck case. But if it doesn't happen, maybe it's for a good reason. Maybe there's something else that you're meant to be doing somewhere else, okay? Still no more interviews in Ethiopia. Why? Well, I don't know. Do you think Morrison will win in lawsuit? So the group lawsuits are worrying me, and I am worried that they're talking again about even more group lawsuits. It worries me now because they've already had the effect that they wanted, in a sense. So when the lawsuits happened in DV 2020 and 2021, the government was sued relentlessly, lots of lawsuits, right? And the government lost those cases. And in DV 2022, it was obvious they were going to get sued again. And sure enough, Jesse Bless and I think the Impact team filed cases pretty early. And so they switched to the pilot program, right? Which vastly improved the processing. But there's a double-edged sword to that, because Curtis's case, the group lawsuit that was filed later, is going to have to argue in a scenario where the majority of the visas will have been granted. The problem has been, largely speaking, has been solved. Now, Curtis won't agree with that, or if he agrees, he won't admit that he agrees. But if you go in front of a judge, let's say you went in front of Judge Mehta or another judge, and the government had issued 48,000 visas or something like that, 45,000 visas or 40,000 visas, and they still have some time to get it up to 45,000 visas, right? How do you make the argument that the government have been lax in their duty to adjudicate these cases? The answer is you can't. It was easier to do that in DV 2020 and 21 because they were obviously just abusing the situation, right? And so the government lost those cases because they had done so little work. They had done very few issuances, and they didn't give a damn. But this time, they've moved heaven and earth to make sure that they're going to issue at least 40,000, probably 45,000, maybe upwards of close to 50,000, right? They've made some significant changes. And so I think the group lawsuits from this point forward that actually go in front of a judge, they're going to struggle, right? And that's partly because the lawyers have already been successful. The threat of the lawsuits has achieved the changes that have made things better. Okay, so I was kind of concerned when Curtis waited so long for his group lawsuit, and I don't think they should be doing another one. I think that would be unkind, frankly, because it's just not winnable from this point forward, in my opinion. Now, Curtis will disagree. Raphael will certainly disagree because he just disagrees with everything I say for whatever reason. But that's my perspective. Now, the individual mandamus lawsuits are a slightly different thing. They're much more expensive, though. For an individual case, yes, I can see how that could pay off for someone. But you've got to have, I think, the charging now $7,500 for those. So they're more expensive. So that's really up to you whether you think that's worthwhile in your case or not. Okay. 23 DV23 47K. KCC told me that DS260 processed. What does that mean to my case? They did. They did. Right. Well, that's good. It's a good thing. However, you're still going to wait for your case number. This is what people don't seem to understand. Everyone's like, oh my God, you got to submit your DS260 on the first day and as fast as possible. Rush, 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 rush. And then you're going to wait for your case number to be current. You're an AF47K and DV 2023. So you're not going to be current until the middle of next year, probably. Probably May, June of next year. And you'll just wait till then. That's all there is to it. There's nothing that you can do unless your case number is current. Okay? I hope people understand the point. Marta, KCC, your case is current and we cannot unlock the DS260. What does it mean? It's DV 2022. Okay, they don't say to you, your case is current and we can't unlock. What they say is they send you an email saying, your case is current for interview processing. That little phrase, current for interview processing. It means you're in a status called, which they call AV. Internally, they call it AV. And it's when you're allocated to your embassy and you're in a queue, and they won't allow any changes at that point. Okay, it's not just because you became current, it's that you were current, your case was processed, and you were moved into this queue. And therefore, they send this email that says current for interview processing. It means you can't change anything at all about your case, unfortunately. And they seem completely, unable or unprepared to do any changes on cases like that. Okay. Okay. Had your Cape Town interview. Some documents they told me to send. The rest of the documents, my status is showing refused, but my passport, yeah, that's normal. When they ask you for documents that you've got to provide later, you're put on a refuse status, but it's a refusal 221G, which is actually AP. And it just means you've got to provide those documents. And once you provide them and they've been reviewed, then you can have a chance to be issued. Okay. Is there still hope for the bill that we've been waiting so long to be passed? You're talking about the Meng Amendment. There's some talk about it again at the moment, but until it actually becomes law, I'm not going to bank on it. I think it's got a very small chance of becoming law. Okay, so we'll wait and see if it does. You've been vaccinated, but not the booster. Will it affect your interview? I don't think so. I don't think the booster is a requirement, but it'll be up to the physician at the medical. But frankly, go get boosted. I mean, it's worth it. It really is worth it. My daughter and my wife both have COVID or had COVID. It didn't affect either one of them bad. They're both young and fit, but I certainly didn't want COVID. But I was in the house with them. But because I was fully vaccinated and boosted, I didn't get COVID, thank God. So it's not a good thing to mess around with. My case number 31,000, something is AV, and per my observation, ACRA is not doing any interviews yet. You want to transfer your case from ACRA to a Ouagadougou, wherever that is, a Ouagadougou. Any guidance? The only guidance I can give you is you can't transfer your case now. You're in AV status, you're stuck. ACRA, you're probably right. I don't think ACRA are gonna interview you, and I'm sorry to say, your chance will probably disappear, Elvis. I'm sorry. That's the reality. Do you think we will have our rights on 19/6? 19/6. 19/6? I think. Do you mean 6th of September? I think there's going to be oral arguments in September, but I don't know that we'll have the judgment in September. We'll have to see how that goes. We may be able to see which way the judge is leaning when we listen into that. We'll see. We'll have to see how things go. Okay. Please explain clearly on reading feasibility, and especially when they say August, we can know DV 2023 interview. I don't know what you want me to explain. You have to give me a clear question for me to explain something clearly. Is there any possibility of cancelling DV 2023? No. Every bloody year for probably the last 10 years, someone has talked about, oh, they're going to cancel. No, they're not. They don't just you can't cancel something that works like this. It's very difficult. It takes a law change, right? And nobody can just cancel this on a whim. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So you couldn't submit your DS260. It probably means you're not taking off the leading zeros. Remove the leading zeros and try again. You can also, sometimes it's shown the red marker on the case number. Yeah, it's going to be the leading zeros. Try that. Remove the leading zeros. When's the best time to pay the USCIS fee? I always tell people don't pay until you arrive in the States. There's no real advantage. There's possibly some additional speed to get your green card if you pay before you come, but honestly, that's difficult to prove with certainty. And who cares? It doesn't matter if you get your green card in 3 months or in 4 months. Who cares? It doesn't make any difference. You have your social security number, you have your passport with the visa in it, you can get a job, you can live, you can do whatever you want, right? Just be a bit patient, right? So for me, I think it's better to pay the $220 fee in the USA. If your family were all included, do they all have to be registered? You include all your family in the original entry, but you don't have to bring all of your family to the USA, and therefore you don't have to fill out DS260s for each and every one of them. Each of them could have a different decision, right, depending on the age of them. Event the PC Gamer, this year's will be. Hope I get started at first try as well as getting an interview because I actually have a sponsor ready. Lol. Well, Ivan, it is a lottery, right? So the number of people that apply and they say, oh, I've got a really good feeling. Well, every time we enter a lottery, we always think we're going to win. But the chance of selection is probably, for most regions, it's about 1 in 100 years. For Africa, it's about 1 in 200 years. So, it's not very often you get selected. Okay. When can I expect to be interviewed? It's a low case number, but I can't predict exactly, but it is a low case number. So, in theory, it could be October, November, December, but it depends whether you've submitted your DS260, whether it's been processed and that sort of thing. Okay. And also, it will depend on your embassy. Yes, thank you. I got that, Dr. Summer. Thank you. Henry, contacted KCC to open my case, but was told my case is ready to be scheduled. Yeah, you can't do anything so you're stuck. You're in this current for interview processing. You're in limbo. There's nothing you can do. Does your sponsor need to submit? No, he fills it up and sends the I-134 is something that your sponsor gives to you. You present it at the interview if asked, okay? If they don't ask, you don't even present it. So no, they don't send it anywhere. It's not rubber stamped or approved by any department or anything like that. They just give it to you along with the supporting documents, and then you present it on the day of your interview. Okay. 20K, got your interview. Good luck for that, Minos. Good luck with that. How do you prevent the request to complete a DS5535 at time of interview? Joe Berg, yeah, they've been requesting. You can't totally prevent it. You can reduce the risk of that. If on your DS260 you're asked for social media, you're asked for information, history about where you've lived and your education history, your residence history, your travel history, your social media history. Those are all things that the DS5535 asks, but for in a bit more detail, right? So if you fill out your DS-260 properly, as I suggest you do, giving all of that history, then you, in my opinion, reduce the chance of the 553 and 35 being requested. Having said that, there's no way you can 100% avoid it. It's just, it's something that they give to some people. I think they will ask less people for that in these later months because the consular officers are aware that there could be a backlog of processing for 5535s. And if they can't get that in time, it can destroy a case. So I was answering this question. But so that's basically, basically the situation. So just make sure your DS-260 is fully filled out is the best idea, right? Is refused visa contained in global visa? Oh, is. So in the numbers I was showing earlier, the refused cases are included in that 55,000 number. And that's why actually the number is lower, right? I'm in Lebanon, do I need a sponsor? If yes. So whether you need to show an I-135, I-134 or not, depends partly on your CO, partly on your embassy, but also on your position. If you've got a lot of savings, you're a wealthy individual, or you've got a very good job, very good career, perhaps you're in IT or something, then you're less likely to be asked for an I-134, right? But if you've got bank statements that show you've got very good savings, take that to the interview, and that would help you. Okay. Same question there, Joel Moba. Yeah. It's always worth having an I-134, even if you think you won't be asked for it, just because you can pull it out at the interview and avoid AP, right? So it's worth doing. Let's see. Okay, at the time that you applied, I was in Iran, but now I live in Italy. Okay, so you chose the embassy in Rome. That's fine. As long as you live there and you have an address there, they'll respect your choice to interview in Rome. How will it change things? It might be harder for the embassy in Rome to accept your educational documents, for example. So they may take a little bit of time in processing your case, but that's the only real difference. Okay. Your friend won the DV lottery. His wife had a green card at the time of entry. It's abundant till now. Abandoned till now. So no, he can add her just because she abandoned her green card from before. He can add her and get her a green card again. So that's not a problem. To answer that question, change of passport. No need to worry about anything with passports. That's fine. Well, that's true. Naples, yeah. All right. So I'm just scanning the questions just to see if there's any good questions here. The embassy in Islamabad. There were a lot of people that went and tried to schedule their cases in Islamabad. So, there's only so much work they could handle, and they haven't made it wide open for DV cases, unfortunately. Okay. You put unemployed in your occupation. That's okay. No problem. Should I unlock? No. No. If they're unemployed today, unemployed is the correct answer. The work history will show what they did before, right? So there's no need to sort of update that with their area of expertise. Don't worry about that. And this is your spouse anyway. So frankly, nobody gives a damn what your spouse does. They're really looking at the principal selectee, not the derivatives. Okay, so don't unlock for that. Yes, EU 4000 could be in November or December. depends on whether your DS-260 is processed, right, and your embassy. I'm sorry, I've been disconnected from YouTube for a while. Any hope for DV 2020? And happy birthday wishes to the daughter. Lovely. So yeah, I addressed this right at the beginning of the video. DV 2020 and 2021, we're still waiting for the appeal process to go through, and that will be in September. So we have to wait until then. I was hoping, Med, you're asking about when will the winners by country be published. I was hoping it was going to be on the VB that we just had a couple of weeks ago, but I think now it will be on the next VB, okay? Because it wasn't in there. When will SA 2500 be scheduled? Next year. That's a sort of medium range, medium to high number for South America. So it won't be until probably May or June of next year at the earliest. What's going on with Ankara? Yeah, I don't know. And no, it's not already over. There are going to be some more interviews scheduled, but I don't know specifically what's going to happen in your case. I get a lot of these sort of questions. Does this case number have hope? Everyone has hope until September 30th, right? We don't know what's going to happen. The final interviews will probably be scheduled in July, but we don't know for 100% certain. They might schedule a few more in the early days of August. We don't know. So we just have to wait and see what happens, right? There's no point making big predictions, that can obviously change later. Okay. There will be another lottery entry period in October, which will be DV 2024. Right, so you'll be able to enter them. Okay, just scanning down. Somebody else got an interview for July. Thousands. They've issued about 5,500 2NLs cases for August. It's amazing effort by KCC. Yeah, Afghans have not had interviews because Islamabad don't schedule the interviews. Let me just there's my phone. Oh, here we go. Just want to do something. I'm hot. It's a very hot day, and I haven't switched my AC on. Sorry, let me just do this. Yeah, otherwise I'm going to cook. Okay. All right. No Afghans. Yeah, I mean, so there's only a few weeks left, right? So they're not going to interview all of the Afghani cases. They're just not. So I'm hopeful they'll do as many as possible, but I don't know what the final tally will be. Okay. Imani, will I be able to take my daughter after 6 months? Imani, I'm not going to say yes or no to that because I don't know what the situation is. I think you've probably asked me about this before, but I can't remember the details. So, can you take your daughter after 6 months? I don't know. I'm concerned. I don't want to answer that question without knowing the details. Right? What questions are asked on interview day? Get this question a lot. The interviews are very easy. You don't have to prepare. You're just going to give honest answers to very simple questions, and mostly the questions are, just sort of random questions. They're just going to confirm the information on your DS-260 with a couple of questions, maybe 1 or 2 questions. They might ask you what you plan to do in the USA. They might ask you something about your education or your work, or it's small talk. It's not a big deal. You don't need to prepare for that. Any question you're asked on the interview day should be totally normal, that you can just answer straight away. Don't prepare, okay? But obviously, just be honest. Be 100% honest, okay? Are there instructions how to supply vaccination confirmation? I'm from Ukraine, living in Poland. Not sure where to take the confirmation, make it readable. I don't know specifically, Roman, what you need to supply, but I think we were talking about booster, why not go get a booster, and then you can establish a record with a local Polish record. That's what I would do personally. Okay. Let me just see if I can answer any more questions here. Victor, since KCC starts working on DV 2023 in October, will there be any disadvantage? Right. So let me just clarify that. In October they start actually interviewing. They've been processing DS260s since May 8th or 9th, right? Whenever the results are out, because some people submit their DS260s within the first day or two. So yeah, if you wait to submit your DS260, then yes, you will have delayed your case somewhat, because all those other cases will be processed or start to be processed before you, right? So you've got a low case number and you're going to get married at the end of September. Okay, we have to wait for the new passport of the wife. Okay, so it's like a load of things here, load of confusion in your question here. So firstly, let me work backwards. You don't have to wait for the new passport of your wife to submit your DS260. So it's fine that you're waiting until you get married, but the day you get married or the next day, submit your DS260 as a married couple, right? That's what I would do. You don't have to wait for her passport. You can take a different passport to the embassy interview than the one you fill out the DS260 in, right? So you don't have to wait. Yes, you would have delayed your case a little bit. So other cases at your case number range will probably go before you because you've delayed your DS260 submission. But frankly, because you're getting married, it's probably the right thing to do. Just wait until you're actually married and then submit jointly. You could also have submitted your DS260 as a single person and then unlock to add your derivative later. But there's plenty of time, so you don't need to worry. Okay. But don't wait until you get her married name passport. That would be silly. Can I predict when the case is going to be scheduled? No, we talked about that earlier. Can't be precise. Is there? Yeah, answered that one earlier. Answered that one. Okay, DV 2022 had the interview on 12th of May. Status changed from ready to AP on the 6th. Changed from AP. Yep, great. And back to went to issued and then went back to ready. That's unusual. But just that was on the 21st, a few days ago. Okay, be patient for the rest of next week. Hopefully that will get sorted out next week. It's normal to see AP after a successful interview. It's not normal to see issued go back to ready. There may be some reason for that. I don't know, but no need to panic. Just wait and see what happens. Okay. Didn't include your elementary details, i.e. primary. Is it necessary? No. They ask for education from secondary, which is typically in most countries age 11 or 12 and up, right? So it's secondary education onwards. That's what the form says. Okay. Had the interview 2 months ago. They told me approved, but your status still says ready until now. Contact the embassy. Sounds like they put you in AP, but they didn't update SIAC. But contact the embassy and say, when are you going to get your passport back? And then that might prompt some activity on your case. Okay. Okay. I made a mistake submitting the DS260. I didn't write the last digit, the second phone number. I repeat the first email address. No, these are trivial matters. I mean, it's better to have an accurate DS260 for sure. And if you're a DV 2023 case and perhaps with a high case number, you could unlock, because if you've got a high case number anyway, your case is going to be processed long before your number is ready, right? But the mistakes you're talking about here, they're trivial mistakes. It's not really going to affect anything. Okay. Atifa, you made your point. Yep. Yeah, well done, Julius. Absolutely correct. In response to this, yeah, don't repeat the same question over and over again. Okay, Atifa, no need to do that. Your number is 26 AS 2022. You're not scheduled for interview. What to do? Well, you've only got a few weeks left, and you may not get a scheduled interview. You may not get your green card. It's very tough, but they are moving ahead with all the other cases in the rest of the world, and there are going to be thousands of people that will miss out. So all you can do is just hope, okay, and just continue to hope. Okay. All right. I think I'm just scanning down to see if there's any last. What's this? Clear. There's some people. Here we go. So, is the visa interview date based on the case number or based on the submission date of the DS260? Some says case number, somebody else says the submission date of the DS260. Oh God, this old chestnut. Right. First of all, there are two things, right? People often ask me how a case is processed. And then the question they should really be asking is how are they scheduled? Okay, there are two different things. The processing is different to the scheduling. That's the first thing you have to understand, right? Now, in the old days, prior to the pilot program, cases were opened based on submission date. Like the earlier you submitted, the earlier your case could be opened. That didn't mean your case was going to be processed first. It just meant that it was going to be opened first. And then your case was started to be processed, and it might take longer to process because you've got an unusual travel history, or you're a nuclear weapons expert that lived in Iran, right? And it's going to take a long time to process your case. So just because you submit early doesn't mean you're going to get processed fast, right? Then there's the scheduling piece. So that's processing. Yes, there is an advantage to submit early to get your case processed earlier, but it's not 100% certain that all cases submitted early will be processed early, right? That's what I'm trying to say there. And I've said that time and time again. I've been saying that for years, actually. And every so often somebody tells me, oh, you said this and you're wrong. And they tell me what I said, and almost 100% of the time, they don't understand what I said. So everything I just said so far is about processing. Now for scheduling, let's move on to scheduling. The government have produced evidence that they are controlling the embassy appointments by case number, right? And they've given that evidence in both Jesse's cases and also Curtis's cases. In Curtis's cases, in the test fake case, they actually showed numbered queues, which were based on the case number. Now, they've given testimony that they base the scheduling on case number, and that's what they should do, right? However, there are some embassies that don't seem to be following that precise method. There is some evidence that maybe KCC are not following that precise method, and so there is some argument about whether that's true or not. We have to wait and see, what really happens. But generally speaking, a lower case number is supposed to go before a higher case number. That's how it's supposed to work. And so it shouldn't be a surprise if they've got things that are working that way. Also, by the way, in the processing, back to the processing for a minute, prior to the pilot procedure, the pilot program, although DS260s were opened in submission order, the documents were being processed in case number order. They were in an ordered list, right? And so, so the case number was, in the old version, case number was important. In the new version, the pilot program, case number is still important. And I'm sure somebody right now is typing, my embassy, Algeria, or whatever, isn't doing it that way. I know, right? I know what you know, believe me. But the reality is there are some things we can't explain. And, we're not going to be able to explain everything. I'm just talking about general principles, right? Which will apply at most embassies. So, that's the age-old debate. But let me just say one more thing. DS submission, I often get people saying, if I unlock, do they use the first DS submission date or the second DS submission date? And it's a stupid question because, there is no aspect of the scheduling that is prioritized based on the date you submitted. There never has been, right? So I can't seem to get that across to people, but there you go. That's what it is. All right. So what else? I want to see this Cleopas. I mean, generally that means somebody is just flooding the questions time and time again. So I want to see what it is. But let's have a look. Let's just answer the question, right? You've got a case number. You're a winner, 2023 winner from Kenya. Your case number is slightly above 50K. How early should I fill the DS260? Really? That was the question. Fill it in relatively early, right? Unless you're trying to delay your case, you fill in your DS260 relatively early. It's not a big mystery, not a big surprise. Okay. All right. I've been going for about an hour, so let me just see if I can find one or two last questions, and then we'll call it a day. You've been selected this May, and I'm here in the USA on a student visa. My number is EU31XXX. Do I need to pay fees ASAP? Right, no. So first of all, you need to decide how you're going to process your case. If you're in the USA, you can do adjustment of status in the USA. As long as you're on a legal status in the USA and you've never been out of status, then you can adjust status in the USA, right? If you adjust status in the USA, yes, you pay fees when you submit your I-485, but you won't do that until your case number is current. If, on the other hand, you say, no, I'm going to process my case back in my home country, that's called consular processing, which is what most people do. And you only pay fees on the day of interview. You don't pay fees prior to that, okay? So that's just the point about that. But firstly, Chris, you need to figure out which way you're going to process, okay? You need to weigh that up. I need some moderators. Yeah, probably do. All right, last question. Let me see if I can find a good one here. Okay, so for all the people that put those sort of questions or those sort of comments in, don't be nasty. There's enough bad shit going on in the world without you guys being nasty to each other in the chat, right? There's real stuff going on. There's real problems, right? So just be nicer to people. Let's be nice. Okay. One last question here. No mistake. No, I read that one already. Being selected. Chris Singh, you're posting too many times and annoying everyone. Stop it. Okay, last question then. How long do I have until I go to the USA after my visa is issued? Also, can I come back to continue my job after going to the USA for the first time? Good question. Let's talk about that. So when you go for your interview and you have your visa issued, the visa will have an expiry date on it, which is 6 months after the date of your medical. And you'll have done your medical probably a couple of weeks before the interview, 2 or 3 weeks. You schedule your interview. So you'll have almost 6 months of validity on the visa when you're given the visa. Then you go to the USA and you activate your status. You could leave straight away at that point. You could leave the USA and go back to your home country or wherever you want. As long as you're not absent for more than a year in that first absence, as it were, then you'll have no problem. And then from that point forward, you try and keep absences out of the country for under 6 months. Technically, you can be out for up to 1 year. But the green card it's not a visitor's visa. You're supposed to be living in the USA. So those trips home and that sort of thing to go and do your job, that's just because you're tying up loose ends. The idea of the green card is to go and live in America. If you don't want to go live in America, if you think your job is better in whatever country you're working on, etc., then just get a visitor's visa, because having a green card brings with it rights of living in the USA, working in the USA, but also responsibilities. You will then pay tax on your worldwide income. So if you continue your job in another country, you may have to pay tax on that in the USA, right? So you don't get the green card if you're not planning to move to America, right? That's what I would say. Okay, I think that's probably all I've got time for today. Thanks for joining this morning and listening in. Do let me know, let me know on my blog if you've got any other questions that you need to answer. Let me know if there's any specific topics you'd like me to answer in a video. I'm happy to create a YouTube video to answer specific topics. Okay. All right, everybody. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye now.